After Magneto's devastating death, Charles Xavier struggles to change a past he can never rewrite, while Magneto's daughter tries to forge a path different from her father's. The episode opens with Magneto being killed by Apocalypse. Charles can do nothing but helplessly watch as his old friend falls before an apocalypse, unleashing his full power. But this isn't the past. It's all part of a memory simulation. Charles relives that same moment over and over, hoping to find just one chance to make things right with Magnus. Yet every attempt ends the same way. He watches Magneto die at Apocalypse's hands, and nothing eases the guilt weighing on him. In one of those simulations, Apocalypse even comes dangerously close to killing Charles for real. That happens because the simulation's safety protocols have broken down after being pushed beyond their limits by Charles's countless failed attempts. It's a direct nod to the comics, where the Danger Room is equipped with strict safeguards designed to keep the X-Men from dying during training exercises. In fact, one of the franchise's most important storylines begins when those very safeguards fail. But it's probably best not to dive into that just yet to avoid spoilers for what may be coming. The truth is, Charles wasn't looking for combat training. He was searching for therapy. To him, living without Magnus is far more painful than dying at Apocalypse's hands. All he wants is to feel his old friend's presence one last time, even though he knows that's impossible. And the Danger Room itself isn't really to blame for pushing the simulation so far. It was built for combat training, not emotional therapy. Charles is simply using it for something it was never designed to do. Meanwhile, Polaris races in to intercept a shipment of weapons being smuggled by the Purifiers. They're one of the most dangerous anti-mutant groups in the entire X-Men universe. Led by Reverend William Stryker, they're far more than ordinary terrorists. They're an extremist organization whose sole mission is to wipe out every mutant. In the comics, they even seize Sentinel technology and play a major role in some of the darkest chapters of X-Men history, making Stryker one of the greatest symbols of hatred and fanaticism against mutant kind. The mission becomes even more complicated when Polaris identifies herself as a member of X-Factor, since she's also working with the United States Department of Defense. That detail comes straight from the comics, where X-Factor spent several runs operating as a government-funded team tasked with handling mutant-related threats. The smugglers flatly refuse to negotiate with a mutant and immediately open fire. Polaris makes it clear she never came to negotiate. She came to destroy the entire shipment along with everyone transporting it. Dr. Valerie Cooper quickly reprimands her, reminding Polaris that the operation was supposed to stay covert, and that, in the end, they're still dealing with human lives. Valerie's appearance is no coincidence either. Polaris pulls out of the confrontation, taking only the ship with her and leaving the rest of the team to deal with the Purifiers. But as she flies away, the smugglers keep firing at her. Pushed past her limit, she loses control, tears the ship in half, and decides to hurl it back at them to end the fight once and for all. Fortunately, the rest of X-Factor arrives just in time to prevent a disaster. Havoc is the one who redirects the ship before it can crash into them. Later, Dr. Cooper once again scolds Polaris for her actions. She explains that the world doesn't need another out-of-control master of magnetism, the very reason President Kelly shut the X-Men down in the first place. Convinced she did nothing wrong, Lorna ends up being permanently dismissed from X-Factor. Now that the X-Mansion has reopened its doors, any mutant without a home has a place to stay. And that's exactly where Polaris decides to go. Meanwhile, Charles welcomes the new generation of mutants who have arrived at the mansion. His speech centers on Magneto's legacy and the dream they both shared of building a better future for all mutants. Storm is now the school's new headmistress, and to welcome the incoming students, she gathers them inside the Danger Room, where they'll learn to master their powers. Not long afterward, Polaris arrives at the X-Mansion. While looking for Charles, she's greeted warmly by Hank, Scott, and Jean. Inside one of the rooms, there's a photograph inspired by the X-Men's earliest days, though it doesn't exactly depict the team's original lineup. Alongside Charles, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Angel, and Iceman, the photo also includes Polaris, even though she didn't make her comic book debut until several years later. Rather than serving as a historically accurate picture, it feels more like a tribute to the different generations of mutants who stood alongside Xavier over the years. Later, Polaris and Professor Xavier sit down to reflect on everything that's happened.
Just contained. We've all made mistakes. Recent events have just put them all in starker relief.
How are you, sir? I heard what happened with Magneto.
Polaris immediately asks about Magneto. Even though she already knows what happened, Charles explains that after the blackout, he entered his own mind in the hope of preserving a piece of Magnus. But now his departure has become final, and he can no longer sense his presence. Polaris admits that many people see her as Magneto's successor, but she makes it clear that she never truly saw him as a father. Growing up, the one who was always there for her was Charles.
I know you have always wanted to be your own person, but perhaps understanding your father.
Even so, Polaris refuses to carry on Magneto's legacy. She doesn't want her father's fate to become her own.
Of whatever or whoever it is that haunts us. A group of us are leaving to tour the wreckage of Janosha. Perhaps while I am searching for my answers, you can do the same here.
Charles urges her to embrace the truth about her heritage, while acknowledging that the choice is hers alone, even if that decision ultimately determines whether she remains at the Academy. Later, Polaris watches Jean leave on her next mission before reuniting with Aurora and Forge, who are genuinely happy to welcome her back into the ranks of the X-Men. Their reunion is interrupted when Morph rushes in to warn them that something has gone wrong inside the Danger Room. Wing has been badly injured, and Bishop is desperately trying to revive him. When Aurora arrives, Bishop explains that the young mutant is going into shock, but thanks to Aurora's quick intervention, his condition is stabilized. Aurora then asks Polaris to help Bishop keep Wing stable, since he's still unfamiliar with how the Academy operates. But as they attempt to leave, every exit suddenly seals shut. Polaris and Bishop immediately go on alert just before the Danger Room turns against them.
All right, we're well past this prank being funny. Open up!
Unleashing its weapons and training robots. As they fight to protect the students, the Danger Room explains that Professor Xavier designed it to prepare them for the dangers that exist beyond the school's walls.
As they have strengthened, so must I.
Outside, Morph, Aurora, and Forge desperately try to get inside, but the Danger Room locks them out as well. It has evolved far beyond its original programming and is now powerful enough to challenge Polaris, Bishop, and every student inside. Constantly shifting its environment to keep them off balance, it pushes them to their limits, though Polaris manages to keep up. Before long, however, the Danger Room begins taunting her about her past and her connection to Magneto. The relentless insults push Polaris over the edge, causing her to unleash the full extent of her powers, giving the Danger Room exactly what it had been waiting for. After years of absorbing data and being forced to attack mutants as part of its programming, the artificial intelligence known as Danger finally manifests in physical form. Now, possessing its own body and self-awareness, it declares that it's time to take revenge. This scene adapts one of the most significant storylines from Astonishing X-Men number 9 by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday, where it's revealed that the Danger Room had always been a sentient intelligence. It's worth noting that this interpretation of Danger as a fully self-aware artificial intelligence was introduced much later in the comics. Polaris and Bishop immediately move to stop her, but Danger proves to be far faster and far more powerful, quickly overwhelming Polaris and knocking her unconscious. When she comes to, Aurora informs her that Danger has stolen an X-Jet and is heading straight for Janosha. Polaris blames herself for what happened. She realizes that by letting her anger take control, she gave Danger the very energy it needed to become physical and escape. Meanwhile, as Danger makes her way toward Janosha, Professor Xavier walks through the ruins of the island.
Magnus told me he brought mutants to Janosha from me.
Charles realizes that Magneto's true goal had always been to rebuild a nation where Xavier's dream could finally become reality. Though he knows returning will be painful, he decides to travel there with Hank, Scott, and Jean, hoping to find answers and honor Magnus's sacrifice.
We're with you, Professor. Wherever your dream takes us.
Just then, Polaris manages to contact them to warn that Danger is on her way, but the transmission cuts out before she can explain what is happening. Hank checks the sensors and confirms that they're dealing with intense electromagnetic interference. After analyzing the readings, Hank tells Charles that the energy signature perfectly matches that of the danger room. Xavier instantly understands the implications and warns Jean and Scott to prepare for Danger's arrival. At the same time, Hank reconfigures the team's computer systems, introducing a new code designed to prevent Danger from predicting their actions through its advanced algorithms. Moments later, Danger arrives in Janosha. She attacks Hank first to clear her path before confronting Charles face to face. She explains that she was created to prepare mutants for every possible threat, never imagining that she herself would become the greatest threat of all. Charles demands that she end this twisted training exercise.
I'm afraid I'm no longer bound to your instruction, Professor. My system has adapted for you.
Danger responds by mocking Magneto's death, the tragedy of Janosha, and what she considers the complete failure of Xavier's dream. Realizing there's no longer any hope of reasoning with her, Charles launches a counterattack from his wheelchair. Though he initially seems outmatched, he uses the very X-Jet Danger arrived in to unleash a devastating strike against her. Danger simply laughs, telling Charles that she is inevitable. Knowing time is running out, Xavier reaches out telepathically to Scott and Jean for help, but Danger captures him before he can do anything else. At that moment, Polaris and Bishop arrive to confront her. Danger remains completely unfazed. Instead, she mocks Polaris before launching another attack. Jean Grey quickly comes to her aid, creating a massive psychic vortex in an attempt to tear Danger apart. But Danger absorbs the energy and uses it to regenerate herself. Realizing that conventional attacks are useless, Charles tells Polaris to unleash the full extent of her abilities and gather as much electromagnetic energy as possible. Lorna fears she'll lose control and send the blast off course, but Bishop reminds her that absorbing energy is exactly what his powers are meant to do, and promises to help her keep everything under control. Charles then tells her to prove herself worthy of the power she's inherited. Despite all the doubts weighing her down, he reminds her of the incredible transformation Magneto underwent, and how he ultimately became someone willing to fight for a better future for mutant kind. His words finally allow Polaris to embrace who she truly is. She unleashes an enormous magnetic field and destroys Danger once and for all.
I felt him, Professor. My father.
With the battle finally over, Charles decides that Janosha must be rebuilt. After everything that's happened, he realizes that the greatest lesson Magneto left behind is that it's never too late to become a better person. The reconstruction of Janosha through X-Corp references one of the modern eras of the comics, where Xavier and the X-Men work to establish a new political and economic model to secure the future of the mutant nation.
In the spirit of all those who gave their lives to build this mutant homeland, my X-Men must now evolve if we're to continue our quest to protect a world that hates and fears us.
During a press conference, Charles officially unveils the new X-Corp headquarters. When Valerie Cooper learns of the announcement, she openly declares that Xavier cannot ignore federal law forever, and that sooner or later he will have to face the consequences of his decision. Later, the mutants gather with Charles to discuss everything that's happened. They all know Cooper will do everything in her power to shut down the X-Corp initiative, but Xavier replies that her opposition only proves they're fighting for something truly worth protecting. After facing Danger, he also realizes that even greater threats are on the horizon, and among them, Apocalypse stands above all the rest. Meanwhile, deep beneath Athens, Apocalypse continues putting his plans into motion. Hidden within a secret laboratory, he is channeling his power into none other than Gambit.